very, very long time ago, people across the deserts of Arabia whispered about something unearthly. They believed there was a creature that didn't hunt the living because it preferred something far worse. It waited until people were buried. And then it came to feast. This creature was called Al-Ghul. The word ghoul comes from the Arabic word al-Ghul, which roughly means the ogre, the devourer, or the one who seizes. It appears in stories dating back well over 1,000 years, though many scholars believe the legends themselves are much older, passed down orally by desert tribes before they were ever written. Unlike many monsters, the ghoul wasn't said to live in castles or caves. It haunted abandoned places, forgotten cemeteries, ruined cities, lonely deserts, and crossroads where travelers disappeared without explanation. People believed that if you wandered too far from civilization, especially at night, you might hear someone calling your name. The voice could sound like a lost child, a crying woman, or even someone you loved. If you followed that voice, you would never return. The earliest stories describe ghouls as shape-shifting demons. They could appear as beautiful women, old travelers asking for help, wandering merchants, or injured strangers. But once their victim was alone, their true appearance emerged. They had long claws, glowing eyes, animal-like legs, blackened skin, and mouths filled with sharp teeth, designed for tearing flesh. Some legends even claim their feet were backward, making it impossible to track them correctly through the desert. One of the reasons people feared ghouls more than any other creature was because they were believed to eat the dead. Fresh graves were their favorite hunting grounds. Families often stayed near graves after funeral because they feared a ghoul would dig up the newly buried body before sunrise. Some tribes even placed heavy stones over graves or buried loved ones deeper than usual, not to keep animals away, but to keep ghouls out. But according to many stories, the dead weren't enough. If a traveler passed through the desert alone, the ghoul would stalk them for miles. It rarely attacked immediately. Instead, it confused its victims. It created mirages. It changed direction without leaving tracks. It imitated human voices. It made people believe they had found water, shelter, or another traveler. When the victim became exhausted, the ghoul struck. As Islamic traditions spread across Arabia, the legend evolved. Some scholars connected ghouls to the jinn. Not all jinn are evil. According to Islamic belief, jinn are intelligent beings created from smokeless fire, long before humans. Like humans, some are righteous, while others are wicked. Many medieval Islamic scholars describe the ghoul as a type of evil jinn that chose to live among graveyards and desolate places instead of human society. This belief made the creature even more frightening because it wasn't simply an animal. It was intelligent. It planned. It deceived. It enjoyed leading people to their deaths. One of the earliest written descriptions appears in 1001 Nights, also known as the Arabian Nights. Several stories mention creatures resembling ghouls living outside civilization. In one tale, a prince encounters a beautiful woman who later reveals herself to be a flesh-eating monster. These stories helped spread the legend beyond the Middle East into Europe during the 18th century. When translators introduced the word ghoul into English, Western audiences had never encountered anything quite like it. Soon, writers across Europe began adding ghouls to horror stories. As the legend spread westward, the creature slowly changed. European authors emphasized grave robbing and corpse eating. Victorian writers imagined pale monsters lurking inside cemeteries. By the 19th century, artists often drew ghouls as skeletal creatures, covered in rotting flesh. This image would eventually influence modern zombies and many undead monsters seen in films today. But older Arabic folklore paints a much stranger picture. Ghouls weren't always ugly. Sometimes they were terrifying because they were beautiful. A lone traveler might meet an incredibly attractive woman wandering the desert. She would ask for help, offer food, invite him to rest. Everything seemed normal until he realized there were no birds, no insects, no footprints, and her shadow wasn't moving. By then, it was already too late. Some legends say ghouls preferred children because they were easier to deceive. Others claimed they targeted greedy merchants carrying gold. There were even stories that ghouls stole jewelry from corpses before eating them, creating myths about haunted treasure hidden inside abandoned ruins. Interestingly, many historians believe these legends had practical purposes. Deserts are dangerous. People die from dehydration, sandstorms, and getting lost. Parents warn children about ghouls to discourage them from wandering away from camps. Travelers were told never to follow mysterious voices in the night, never trust strangers found alone in the wilderness, never leave the safety of a caravan. In many ways, the ghoul became a supernatural explanation for real disappearances. Another fascinating belief was that ghouls could imitate dead relatives. Imagine burying someone you loved. Days later, you hear their voice outside your tent. They ask you to follow them. According to folklore, anyone who obeyed was walking directly into the ghoul's trap. Different regions gave the ghoul different abilities. Some believed it could transform into wolves, hyenas, dogs, or vultures. Others said it could stretch its limbs unnaturally. Some insisted sunlight weakened it. Others believed it could walk freely during the day while disguised as a normal person. There was no single version. Every village had its own terrifying encounter. In North Africa, similar legends described cemetery spirits that possessed corpses. In Persia, stories blended the ghoul with ancient demons from pre-Islamic mythology. Over centuries, these traditions merged, creating countless variations. By the 20th century, Hollywood transformed the ghoul again. Movies portrayed them as undead creatures, similar to zombies. Role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons turned them into cursed flesh eaters. Video games gave them mutations, diseases, or supernatural powers. Anime created entirely new interpretations, but almost all modern versions trace their ancestry back to the same ancient desert monster. One of the biggest misconceptions is that ghouls are undead. Originally, they weren't. The oldest stories describe them as living supernatural beings, usually demonic or related to jinn. They didn't become corpse-like monsters until European horror literature reshaped the legend. So where did the very first ghoul come from? No one truly knows. Some believe the myth began with hyenas digging up graves. Ancient people may have blamed a supernatural creature after finding disturbed burials. Others think the legend evolved from fear of bandits who lured travelers into the desert. Religious scholars connected them to evil jinn. Folklorists believe the myth combines all of these influences. After hundreds of years, history and imagination became impossible to separate. Today, whenever you see a ghoul in horror games, movies, or novels, remember that its roots stretch back over 1,000 years to the endless deserts of Arabia, where travelers feared something waiting beyond the last campfire. Not a vampire, not a zombie, but a patient predator that could wear any face, speak in any voice, and wait silently beside a freshly dug grave. Because, according to the oldest stories, the ghoul never hunted out of hunger alone. It hunted because deceiving humans was part of its very nature. And somewhere, in the oldest corners of Arabian folklore, people still say that if you hear someone calling your name in the middle of an empty desert, you should never answer.